Hello, 3D Basics class. It's week 7. Today, animation. We will talk about how to animate things in Blender and 3D space. We'll also talk about how to render an animation, how to get it out into something that you can view and TikTok to your memes. And then we'll also talk about assignment 3, which is to create an animation. So, hopefully you're excited. Those of you that are aspiring animators, let's do it. Blender. I have a new little keystroke thing here since I'm not at my home computer. So like you can see my clicks and my types down here at the bottom. So that's that. Anyway, okay. I'm in my layout workspace here. So you can see I'm in layout. You probably have seen it. But down here along the bottom, we have a timeline. Timeline that measures frames. So right now it's at frame 0. This is a current time indicator. Current time is frame 0. And you can slide it forward and you can see the frames changing. Oh, now I'm on frame 250. So yours maybe says 250, but you can actually just type in a number here, however many frames long you want your timeline to be. Maybe it's 500 frames. And you can drag this little bar to kind of squeeze more frames into your view here. Okay, let's look at output properties here real quick. It's this one that kind of looks like the printer. We've got resolution X, resolution Y. We talked about that before, but look at your frame rate here. Frame rate, 24 frames per second. Hopefully you're a little familiar, if you're in the video program at Hennepin Tech, about differences in frame rates. 24 frames per second is obviously a slower frame rate. It has what they call a cinematic look. 30 frames per second is like a standard kind of video format. And then you've got these higher frame rates up here, 60, 120, 240. So if you're doing something with like a very high refresh rate monitor, like maybe some hardcore gaming, and you're creating some game animations, you maybe want to be doing it at a higher frame rate. And then frame start and frame end. So the reason I want to talk about this first is because this impacts kind of the timing of things. So I recommend that you do 30 frames per second just to start until you have a reason not to do 30 frames per second. But that like if you're wanting to create something that's 10 seconds long, notice the timeline isn't measured in minutes and seconds. It's only measured in frames. So if you want something that's 10 seconds long and you're at 30 frames per second, you want your frame range to go from 1 to 300 because 30 frames per second times 10 seconds equals 300 frames. So now if I change this to 60 seconds, then this is only going to be, 5 seconds. Let me panic and do math in my head real fast as I'm recording. So then you wanted this to be 600. Now this doesn't actually input or affect how it renders necessarily, but like as you're playing it, it's going to attempt to play it at the frame rate that it's set to. So like when you if your mouse is in the timeline down here and you press the space bar, it's playing. And you can see up here in the top right, it's playing it at 60 frames per second. So as you're like previewing your animations and trying to get it to look a certain way, the frames per second is going to affect that. So as you can see now, if I change my frame rate to 30 frames per second here, my CTI is going to move half as fast. So just be aware of that. So I'm going to do 30 frames per second, and whoops, I'm clicking in the wrong window. 30 frames per second, and I'll just make this 250 because that seems normal. Okay, now let's animate. So first off, let's just move this cube. Let's move a cube. We animate by creating keyframes, just as you do in many other things, Premiere and others, After Effects, things of that nature. Okay, so go to frame 1. I'm going to just delete my camera real quick, and I'm going to delete my light real quick. So we just got our cube here. Select our cube. we can insert a keyframe by hitting the I key. I for insert keyframes, I. And we're greeted with quite a long list of properties. Insert keyframe menu, location, rotation, scale, location and rotation, lots of options here. For now, let's just do location. And so it has keyframed the location of our X. And you can see now in the timeline, there's a little yellow, like underneath where we were on frame 1, there's a little yellow keyframe. So this diamond shape is a keyframe. Additionally, if you, on the right-hand side in our properties window, bottom right, go to your object properties here. We can see that now our location, X, Y, and Z has turned yellow, and we've got 3 diamonds here. That this is telling us that this property is animated. So if I move, let's go ahead and move forward on the timeline, maybe go to frame 60 or something like that. You can also type in the number 60 here to get to that exact keyframe. And now let's move this. So we have our cube selected, we're still in object mode. I'm gonna hit G to move this, and maybe I'll move it right here. Okay, a couple things have happened. These went from green to orange, and these diamonds are now hollow. So, follow along with me. Hit I to bring up our keyframe menu again, I to insert a keyframe. And you can choose location again, or you can, maybe you see that we have a new option here, available. So this is, what available does is it will add a keyframe for anything that is being animated. But so just do location again, just for the sake. You can see now that this went from orange to yellow, and our diamonds here have been filled in, and there's a new keyframe on the timeline here. So we've got 2 keyframes. We keyframed it in the middle, and then we moved it, keyframed it at the right. So if I go back to frame 0 here and press the space bar, it animates over there. Great, you've done it. Actually, maybe I'll make this a little shorter. Maybe I'll only make this 100 frames. 100 frames and then enter. Play for us. You've animated. Great. Okay, that's the first thing. So oh gosh. One thing to note. So if we only keyframed the location. So if I change the rotation like this, if I rotate the cube, it's going to keep that rotation, but maintain the location animation. So I can even scale this down. If I go S and scale this down really tiny, because we haven't keyframed, we're not animating the scale, it's still going to stay that same scale, stay the same rotation, but maintain the location animation. Now here's another thing. If I move this, if I go G, and if I move this here, you can see that this turned orange again. It says, hey, what's going on? But I don't add a keyframe, it's just going to go right back to where it was. It's going to maintain that same animation, location animation. So only things that are being animated will animate. Now, there's something that we can turn on, and that's called auto keying. So there's this button right here, auto keying. Automatic keyframe insertion for objects, bones, and masks. You don't know what bones or masks are yet, maybe. And if it's a toggle, so if you turn this on, now if I were to move, so I'm kind of right in the middle, I'm like on frame 37 here. If I G and move this and left click, you can see that it turned yellow, and actually it turned all of these yellow. It turned the location and the rotation and the scale yellow, and it added these little diamonds for everything here. And now we also see that there's a keyframe on our timeline down here on the bottom. Now it's auto keying. So also if I rotate here like this and G move it here like this, because I have auto keying on, any change that I make at any point in time on the keyframe, it's going to add keyframes. So there's lots of different schools of thought. So like you can select a keyframe down here and delete it. So you can like draw a box around it, hit the delete key if you want. So if you're doing like lots of fine animations and kind of wanting to work fast, sometimes auto keying can be helpful. Just, you know, like moving ahead in time a little bit. You know, doing things like this and rotating and scaling and I don't know. So if you're if you're quickly adding lots of keyframes and things like that, maybe you want auto keying on. Or like if you're doing character animations, usually it's happy was what I was gonna say, helpful. But just like be aware, if you turn on auto keying, it's automatically keying all of these transform things: location, rotation, and scale. So let me delete all of these. I deleted all the keyframes, so now all these went back to gray. All of these diamonds became little dots again, so we can reset everything. I'm just gonna go 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1. Okay. Lots of ways to add animation. So that was eye. We did eye, and you know you can do a couple of these, location and rotation. So if we do eye, location, rotation, you can see that all of these turned yellow. There's all like, close this off. Don't forget to move forward in the timeline. So like if let's say I'm still on frame 1, and I say, okay, now I want it to move here and rotate here like this. Oops, I still had auto keying on. Undo, undo. Don't forget to turn auto keying off. There we go. And if I go G up here and R rotate here like this, and I go I insert available, but I just kind of recorded over my first keyframe, so I'm still on frame 1. So you got to have 2 different points in time that you're animating between. So another way to animate is, rather than I, is you can actually just click this little spot over here. So if I only wanted to keyframe the X location, if I only wanted to animate the X, I could just hit this little thing next to the little lock here. And if you hover over it, it actually says animate property. And so that way I can, you know, move forward on my timeline, and then go, you know, GX, oops, and go this way, you know. You can do I insert available, or you can even just close this diamond here and say, add a keyframe there. So that adds a keyframe. So now we've got a keyframe here, animating in the X. And so now if I were to move in the Y direction at all, it wouldn't make a difference, because the Y isn't animating. Y doesn't have keyframes on it, only the X does. So I could even move up the Z, or move the Z up. That wouldn't make a huge deal because it's only the X. But if I tried to change the X like this, say, oh, go back there, if I don't add a keyframe, it's going to ignore it because it sticks to what's in between the keyframes. But if I did want to do that, I could kind of, you know, drag this X back here this way. Then I could close this little diamond here, add a keyframe. It was that way and then that way. Keyframes. Now, the other thing that maybe you are deducing, I'm going to Shift A, add a cube here like this, is that any property here in Blender that has this little animate keyframe thing, you can animate. So real quick, I'm going to make this even shorter. I'm just going to make this 60 frames. So I'm going to keyframe everything on frame 1. So I'm going to go I insert location, rotation, scale. I'm going to go to frame 60. Actually, why don't we make it looping like this? Okay, this is a fun exercise. So I'm going to G, move it, R, rotate it, and S, scale it like this. And then I'm going to I insert keyframes, location, rotation, scale again. Okay, great. And then I want it back on frame 60. I want it to go back to the beginning. So what I can do is I can select this keyframe here and just go copy, Control C, Control V, paste. So I copied that the same keyframe that was on the first frame to the last frame. So it should loop perfectly like this. Yeah, okay. Okay, now here's the other fun thing. Let's go to Material Preview, and let's go to our Materials tab. And let's put a new material on here. Just a basic material is fine, base color. And let's go to frames 1 here, and let's animate our base color. Then we'll go to frame 30, add a keyframe for the base color, and make it something funky, make it green. Is that gonna do it? Oh no, okay, I need to change it green, and then I need to do I insert available like this. Or the other thing you can do is you can just like open this and close it, kind of make a new keyframe. So now it should go white to green, yeah. And then we gotta go back to white, so I need to, so how do I select just, because we already copied the location, rotation, scale keyframe. If I just wanna copy the base color keyframe, we need more info, because right now it's just one set of keyframes. So down here on your timeline, there's actually this little like pop out. There's like that little arrow that you can click and you can bring it out here. So actually it looks like this. And I think if you do N, does that work? No. T? No. You actually have to open this up. So you've got, you can twirl open this summary here. And you may need to make a little bit more room here because it can get pretty full. So we've got, if you twirl these open, this is the keyframe for the X location, the Y location, rotation are these three, and then scale. So that's the cube actions. Then we also have material one here, shader. This, you can see this can get a little bit messy. But we're changing the RGB values here. That's what's animating. So you can just, and this kind of takes time to understand how to read this. But looking at material 001, so there's this shader node tree here. There's a keyframe on frame 1, and there's a keyframe on frame 30. So this is telling us that everything underneath, kind of inside this little twirl down here, has keyframes at that location. So like for example, you can click and drag these as well. So like if I want the blue value to be slower, I can move this further down. Whoops, I can click and drag and move this further down the line. So it like turns kind of teal and then it turns kind of green. Sorry, I'm kind of getting off track a little bit. But anyway, we don't even need to look at those individual ones. I can just copy this one here and go to frame 60 and paste it here. So then it should hopefully go back to white, right? No. Maybe what I need to do is just copy this value, copy this hex code, E7, E7, E7. Go to frame 60 here like this, type it in. E7, E7, E7. There we go. Okay, so anyway, the point I was trying to make was you can keyframe anything, like not just the size and scale and shape of things, but like colors and like really any property. Okay, so looking here at our timeline, let's kind of try to analyze this a little bit better. So there are several different ways to view your animation. I think this is just called the timeline. Yeah, so if here, the editor type that we're looking at is called the timeline. So if you click on this little clock icon, there's lots of different like animation, I don't even know what you call this, like workspaces or different ways of viewing your keyframes. We'll stick with timeline for now. And let's talk about kind of like the timing and spacing of things. So a summary. A summary contains like all things. So it shows where there's a keyframe for anything underneath. So if you twirl open summary, we've got cube, and then, oh my gosh, for some reason when I'm here in my office, I'm like always accidentally right-clicking. It must be my mouse or my like posture or something. So open up cube, and there's two things that are animating on the cube. There's the material where the color's changing, and there's also like the cube actions that are changing. So like with the cube actions, let's see. You can, and I kind of mentioned this already, but you can space these out a little bit differently. So like, let's say for example, I wanted it to be a little bit slower. So I dragged this like midpoint keyframe out to like frame 40, and then maybe I'll move this one out to frame 80. And it looks like I'm like multiplying my keyframes a little bit, but it's honestly for me, like this is one of the hardest things about animating is understanding the timeline and how the keyframes work in Blender, because honestly I think this is one thing that can be done a little better. It's like kind of, it's difficult. So the summary along the top row is showing like there are keyframes for anything right here. It's not until you like kind of twirl down and open up that you see which things have keyframes at what area. So like summary, you know, has everything. There's only the one thing in, whoops. There's only the one thing in the cube, and so the cube also has these in all different places. But now that I'm twirling this open, we can see that the like transform properties are keyframed here, and the material properties are keyframed here. So if like I could line this one back up with this here, you know, and it would kind of fall in line with that, etc. And then maybe change this to 80 so we can see that it's slowing down. So the reason I changed it to 80 is because I wanted to like, it'll only play what you have as set as your start and end. So if I change this back to 60, it's going to cut off the end of it with the animation. And the reason I don't want it to be like 600 is because then like it'll just sit there forever, and I want to be able to watch it over and over in succession. 80. Okay. Okay, let's talk about easing, and let's talk about another timeline or like editor, blah, blah, called the graph editor. So real quick, I'm gonna duplicate this a couple times. Shift D, X like this. Okay. This first one, I want to keyframe the Y position. Actually, no, I'm gonna do all of these the same. Can I do them all at the same like this? I'm gonna move forward in time, frame 60, GY like this. Oh, I can do them all at the same time. Okay. Oh no, I can't. It was just, it only did the first one. Okay, dang. I got excited for a second. I thought I'd be able to keyframe multiple things. Okay, hold on. So I want my Y to be 0. Okay. Before we move on, I guess, I want to talk about easing, and I also want to talk about something called the graph editor. So I've got one box selected here. Oops, and I had keyframes on there already. Delete those. You didn't see that. I'm going to keyframe the Y position here on frame 2. Give me frame 1. Y position on frame 1. I'm going to go forward 60 frames and go, you know, just type in 3 meters here. Maybe make it 5. And then add a keyframe like this. Now I want it to be more dramatic than that. Give me 15. There we go. Okay, it's moving 15 meters. Okay, note. Oh, and I need to change this to like 80. Oops. End frame is 80. Okay, note. When the cube starts, it eases out, it gets up to speed, and then it eases into the stop. This is called easing. Follow me along. Click the editor type here. We've been working in the timeline. Let's look at the graph editor, please. Okay, maybe make this a little bit bigger. Okay, think back to, and actually we need to kind of also make this a little bit bigger so we can kind of see the whole graph here. Okay, think back to your calculus class, if you took calculus. So we are looking at a graph of the Y value changing here. So the object, so this green line is marking the Y value. It's at a value of 0 here. It slowly starts off, then it gets up to speed, and then it kind of curves to a horizontal point again at 15. So this is the mathematical representation of how it's easing. Okay, I'm going to animate this box now. So I'm on frame. I want to go to frame 1. I want keyframe Y at 0, and then on frame 60, I want to go to a value of 15 and keyframe this again. So right now these have the same animation. If you look at this. Now on the second box, we can change, and actually you probably weren't seeing this stuff here anyway. I want to change the easing. So on here, if I select one of these keyframes here on the graph editor, I can change, there's like a little handle that I can kind of move around and manipulate a little bit. And you can see that as I do that, it's changing how it's animating. So if I crank this all the way here, see if you can, before I play it, can you guess the kind of animation it's going to have? So like this is over time. It's going to, again, slowly start off, and it's going to get up to speed, and then is it going to ease in or is it going to snap in? I hate when teachers ask those kind of silly hypothetical questions. So just play it, dummy. So we've changed the, it's pretty much the opposite of easing now on one side. So that's one thing. Let's have 3 examples here. So I'm going to go to frame 1 here on this third cube. I'm going to keyframe the Y again. Go to frame 60, make this 15, and add a keyframe there. So 1 and 3 have the same properties now. But let's say I don't want to have any easing at all. Let's say I just want it to be like a totally static, or not static, but like a totally constant movement. If you select one of these keyframes on the graph editor here, the V key is going to change the handle type. So you can see that there's like a couple different things here. So if you go vector like this, it's just going to, maybe? Yeah, so it's just going to make it straight lines. So now if we compare these ones, so actually let me hide this one real quick because that one's distracting. So if we compare these two, so they both leave at the same time, and at the halfway mark, they're in the same place, but this one kind of wiggles a little bit in comparison. So that's like constant, that's a constant speed. So like analyzing the graph here compared to this one, you can see that it's a constant speed. There's a point where this one is moving slower, then it's moving faster, but they eventually reach at the same time. So the graph editor. You can manipulate the easing of things a little bit more. So a more practical example. With 2 here, I mean, this is silly. You would never do this. But you might have like a little bit more of an exaggerated easing. So maybe you kind of, if I can, if you're having trouble, let's see, if I grab this, will I be able to get it? There we go. There's, Walt Disney had like principles of animation, like squash and stretch. Maybe we look at those a little bit closer in the animation class in the fall semester. But just sort of like anticipation and things like that some of those things are done through like easing. So this middle one here, just look at this. If I kind of exaggerated the ease in and ease out of each thing here. So it kind of moves a little bit faster in the center. Anyway, so the keyframes are all kind of doing, the keyframes are the same. No, I shouldn't say that. The values of the keyframes are the same. They're both going from 0 to 15. But how they get there is manipulated through the graph editor. And I'm a fan of the graph editor. So you can like play around with these handles, change. So like if it dips below the line like this, it's actually going to move backwards first. And the other thing too is you can actually change the values here too. So you can move these around and say like, well, I actually want it to move further. Things like that. The same transform, like if you click and hold, and I realized my tool thing went away. Sorry. I can start that up again if you want. No, you're fine. If you click and hold the middle mouse button, you can kind of move around in here. There's also this button here that says normalize. So if you've got multiple things animated and you're wanting to use on the graph editor, if you hit normalize, it's going to kind of put them all on the same plane together, or put them all on the same scale together, I should say. So you may need to kind of adjust these windows a little bit. If you hit the N key here in the graph editor, you can change some of the or refine some of these values here in the F curve menu. Modifiers, I don't know if we'll cover those in this class. And you can change the interpolation of stuff as well. So like with number 2 here, know where to go. There we go. You can change this to linear, right? Will that work? Anyway, play around, normalize. Okay. So really, that's the gist of it. Adding keyframes at one point, moving forward or backward in time, changing something, and then adding new keyframes. And you can do that to anything. So like, and we'll talk about this more when I talk about your assignment, your animation assignment. And then I'll probably walk through kind of a simple example on how I do it as well. But you don't need to, or when you are beginning animating, you don't need to do like crazy complicated animations. You just need to have nice animations, smooth animations, and like with different multiple things. So like you can have some very gentle camera animation. You can keyframe the location of your camera, or like the lights or the brightness of your lights, and like just simple things like that are the way to start here. Before we talk about the assignment though, I want to talk about rendering an animation. And actually, so real quick. So as I said when we were talking about rendering before, you have to have a camera. So what I just need to add a camera in the scene here, Shift A. And camera, please, there we go. And let me just Control-Alt-0 like this, get it in view, and just see if I can see it in here. I just gotta change my angle a little bit, Control-Alt-0. You know. Oh, and now I need to zoom out just a little bit. Here we go. Okay, and then I also want to have a light in the scene, otherwise it'll be dark. Shift A, add a light, add a point light just right here like this, and default power 1500 like this. Let's go to render preview like this so I can see it. Zero my number pad to see the light. Okay. Okay, there it is. Now, animating. No, not animating, rendering animations. There are 2 ways. Well, there's lots of ways, but there's kind of 2 methods. The first is to render directly out of Blender or whatever program as a video. So it'll like actually just create a video file for you straight out like that. The second method is to render an image sequence. So it renders each individual frame as its own image. The latter, the image sequence, is the safer way to do it, and honestly the preferred way to do it. With things that are small and simple and short, like the one I'm doing right now, that's 80 frames long, it's probably fine just to render it as a video file, and I'll show you that. But the reason it's preferred to render as an image sequence, to do one image at a time, is that if you have a very long render or a complicated render, or something that's going to take hours and hours and hours, like you're going to do it overnight, if there's an error at any point along the way, it's going to fail and you're going to have to start over. Versus if you're doing an image sequence, it renders one image at a time. If you have an error, like, so if it's going to take 10 hours and at 9 hours 50 minutes the power goes out, you still have 9 hours and 50 minutes worth of renders done and in the bag. Whereas if you're writing a video file and it ends at 9 hours 50 minutes, it's corrupt and it can't be recovered. So I'll talk you through both examples. And actually, there's another reason. So the other reason to do an image sequence is that you can do what's called render farming. So you can split up different parts of your animation on different machines. And I know students have done this at Hennepin Tech in the lab, that they'll have their Blender file that's ready to render, they'll save it, and they'll copy it onto like 4 other computers. Let's say it's 500 frames long. they'll have one machine do the first 100 frames, and at the same time, another machine will do frames 101 to 200, and then the next machine will do 201 to 300, and then so you're doing it in 1/5 the time because you're farming it out amongst different machines. And then you just stitch them back all together at the end once they're all done. So first I'll show you how to just make a video file. All right, so Blender. Let's go to our output properties, or render properties here, sorry. EV is fine. Yeah, I'm not going to change any of that. Okay, now we'll look at output properties. Output, scroll down here. File format. We want to change this to a video format, or as some might say, a movie format. AVI. And Mac users, you may have different options here. But for everyone, I'm going to recommend doing MPEG video because it's just the most universally acceptable video file format. Okay, you can let's twirl open a couple other things here. Color management actually doesn't matter. Keep that closed. Encoding, this is the other big one. Container. So I'm a little bit of a video file format and codec nerd. So when you make a video file, there's audio and video that goes into it, and it goes into a container file. Matroska is MKV. You've maybe seen it. Maybe like the Sony cameras. That's cool. No, you guys. I think you guys have Blackmagic cameras now. Makes the MKV files. MPEG 124, AVI, QuickTime DV, Matroska Flash, blah blah blah. Do MPEG 4. MP4 is like pretty universally recognized as the easiest to work with. Okay, and video codec H.264. That's just like a normal regular compression, like easy peasy. So this is going to give you like a relatively small video file that is very easily accessible and shareable and whatever. You can change the quality. You know, lossless would give you a really big file. If you lower the quality, it'd be a smaller file. Anyway, encoding speed, yeah, whatever. I don't even know what some of these things are. No, I do know what bitrate is, but that's fine. If you really wanted like the super high quality, you probably wouldn't do H.264. You'd probably change this to QuickTime, and you'd probably make this, I don't know. DNX is sort of the Windows equivalent of ProRes. Anyway, boring. H.264 compressed. Okay, and then you would go to render animation. Wait, no, don't stop, cancel. Don't do that yet. You gotta just save this somewhere. So when you render an animation, it is gonna spit out the file somewhere. So look at your output here. Hit the little folder and choose a place where you want this to go. So I'm just gonna go on my desktop and make a new folder, and I'll call this 3D renders. Okay, there we go. Whoops. Where'd it go? 3D renders, here we go. Accept. So you can see that now it's on my C drive, desktop, 3D renders, whatever. The other thing you can do, actually, if you open this back up again, is you can like signal a file name here on the bottom. So I'll call this like first box render and accept. Okay. Now that we know where we're saving it, make sure you change your output here, and then you can go render animation. And so because I'm doing EV, it's going to go pretty fast, and you'll see it kind of happen before your eyes here, and then boom, it's done. So then I'll go to my Finder here, and go to my desktop, and go to 3D renders, and here it is, my first render.mov. Oh, I changed it to MOV. That's fine. MOV is fine too. But there's my video file. It's done. Yeah, maybe I'll even loop this. Loop it. Ta-da. Okay. So that's like the simple way. I'll change this back from QuickTime to MP4. Okay. And good for many circumstances. If you're just doing something quick or doing like a little spec or something like that, But the way you should practice doing, and the way that I recommend doing, is to do an image sequence. Okay, so let's change this. How do we do an image sequence? Okay, so, frame 1 to 80, good. Output. I'm going to make a new folder in here, and we'll call this like image sequence 1. And I'm going to open this up. Okay, accept. Let's change the file format down here, bottom right. Change this from FFmpeg video to an image format. We'll just call it PNG. How about? And if you're doing alpha, remember the whole alpha deal, turning on the film. And then, let's do it. Render animation. So now it's going to do the same thing, go through the same process, but then when I go back to my Finder and look at the result, I'll see that there'll be 80 images instead of one video file. Okay, great. So now here in my Finder window here, I've got image sequence 1, and within, can I make these a little bigger? View. Extra large icons. Here we go. I have 80 PNGs, and so it's called them first box render, and then it's labeled the frame 0001, 0002, 0003, etc. So we can see all the images here. One of the other huge advantages to doing it this way is like, say you need to go back and make edits. So let's say you've got a really long render that's like a fight sequence, and you have different camera angles. And it's like, oh, maybe after the fact you realize, in this shot I wanted it to be a punch instead of a chop. And then so instead of having to re-render the whole thing, you just re-render that one shot that's a punch, and then stick it back in there. You just replace those 60 frames or whatever it is. So very handy. And the other thing too is like if you're an After Effects person or a Premiere person, you can import an image sequence. So actually, like real quick. So I know this is not the After Effects class, but like I'll just show you. If you do After Effects, you can import here and find your image sequence, 3D render, image sequence 1, and select all of these 80, and there's sequence options here. And you can import as a PNG sequence. Import as footage, right? And this will work, right? If I do it like that, yeah. And so then it's just one thing here, and then like you're already done. You can do a new composition and. Okay, well now I'm getting a warning. But anyway, like it's not that complicated. Pause while I deal with this. Okay, but maybe you're not all After Effects users. So how would you stitch this together in Blender? There is a way. All right, close the render window. We want to go to, let's see, how am I doing this? I need to remind myself. How do I get there? Oh, here, okay, sorry. Very, very top left here. Next to where object mode, there's this little kind of grid ball thing, editor type. Hit this drop down, and we want to go to, where is it? Video sequencer. Here we go. Okay. Now, sorry, I'm like realizing I forgot to do something, so I'm going to edit it in later. Now, let's add. So video sequencer, the sequencer is it's sort of like a nonlinear editor that you'd get in Premiere or something like that. But anyway, so let's add. And we want to add an image/sequence. And so locate your thing. So it's on my desktop. It's in 3D renders, image sequence. Oh gosh, I clicked too fast. Add image sequence. Okay, here we go. So the thing that's handy here, so I've got all of my images here. You got to try to match up some of these things. So we want, my start frame was 1 and my end frame is 80. So I'm going to type those in. And for whatever reason, you got to make sure that they're like actually arranged that way alphabetically, because sometimes they're like out of order for whatever reason. So just make sure that, let's see, how do I do it here? Sort by name. So hit this little drop down and sort by name so that they are actually like the first one that you're selecting is frame 1. I'm going to hold down the shift key and select frame 80 like this. So they're all selected, you know, and then also in these settings here in this gear wheel, we're starting on frame 1, ending on frame 80. Add image strip. So then it plops them all on your timeline as such. And then it's as simple as outputting the video file again, as we did initially. So, and how did I do that? It's file format, PNG. Change that to FFmpeg video. I'll make the container MP4. Video codec H.264 is good. And now we can go to the render menu and do render animation again. And notice that time it went a lot faster, because rather than actually rendering every single image, all it's doing is like gluing them together into a video. And so now here in this folder, I do actually have a video file that's first box render 0001 through 0080. That's just a MP4 file. Great. It's great. Okay. So let's talk about assignment 4. Okay, here we go. Assignment 4, movie studio graphic. Create an animated movie studio graphic, 3 to 5-ish seconds in length. It must contain text, at least 3 animated elements, and have some sort of reveal. Here's a big compilation of examples. So I linked a YouTube video here. Oops, getting work emails. Of like a lot of sort of iconic things. And yours do not have to be this detailed, but this is just sort of like a lot of examples of like things that are like 3D, simple, have animation, and like you see all over the place. So Warner Brothers, you know, this is Marvel. And again, like these are way more complicated than you need, but like something in the spirit of this. And I'll show you an example. And I realize we haven't really talked about doing text yet, so I'll cover text real quick after this. But like, you know, it just says the word Marvel. What's another good one? You know, like Universal. So this, you know, there's like some lights, and it's just like a little bit of movement. The camera moves, whatever. Disney, you know, all of these have like some form of 3D. Yep, stars flying through 3D. What's this one? DC or something? Did you watch the trailer for the Flash movie? Sony Pictures, you know, Nickelodeon. The one I always think of, maybe it's in here. Oh, I mean, I guess this is one that people always think of. This was sort of like the original Pixar. Oh, we already saw that one. That's a repeat. DreamWorks. The one I always think of is Legendary. Legendary Pictures intro. No, maybe it's not. There's like one with a bunch of gears. Anyway, so this is just kind of what I'm thinking. So going back to your assignment. 6 points for at least 3 animated elements, 2 points for use of text, 4 points for submitting a rendered video file, and then 5 points for on-time submission and sharing it with the class. And just your friendly weekly reminder or bi-weekly reminder. Sharing it with the class includes being there for our Zoom and either like talking about it during our Zoom and or writing up a little blurb that I can read when I share it with the class. So again, like I don't think I'm asking for too much here. You can very easily check off these boxes and get the points. I would be very pleased, and I think you'll be pleased with yourself if you put in a little bit extra time and energy and experiment, mess around, try to do something cool, try to do something interesting, and see what you get. So let me talk through how I might get started on this. And also just kind of recap text. I know we talked about text, using text in a Zoom, but not officially in a lecture, so I'll just do that real quick right now. Okay. So let me start with my text, in fact. I'm going to go Shift-A, and I want to add text. And so text is different than other things in 3D. To edit text, you have to hit Tab to get into edit mode, but then you can actually type right in here. Use your keyboard. So I'm going to say, I want to call this Nolan Studio Stuff. Cool. To change the font of a text, down here, Object Data Properties, the green one, you have font. You can twirl this open and change your regular font. So like even if you have bold or italic, whatever, just change the regular one. It's just always simpler. Open font. And it'll search through the fonts on your library in your computer. So, what do I want? I want something like kind of bold and blocky. A good place to look for fonts is just on Google. I try not to say the name very much, but if you go to fonts.google.com, these are all free fonts for you to download, and there's like tons. And you can like sort by like type too. So you can say font properties. I want something that's thick and wide, but like narrow. I don't know. You can play with these however you want, and download them and install them right away. Impact is the font of memes. And you know me, I spend way too much time trying to find the right font. Ooh, stencil. Let's try it. Nolan Studio Stuff. Oops, and I gotta use my arrow keys like this. And I can change. You can change some of the paragraph stuff. I want center alignment. Whatever. Okay. Change the character spacing. Ooh, you can make it a little bit more. Yeah, I could space it out a little bit. 1.1. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Change the line spacing. 1.3. Great. Also here, you can sort of extrude. I should go Tab to get back into object mode. You can extrude text in a couple of different ways. While it's still a text object behind my head here, you can do it through geometry here in this geometry dropdown. You can just say extrude, just like this, and it'll work for you. So for the most part, if you're just doing text simply, this is a totally fine way to do it. If it's just like one piece, you can do that. But since I am making this a lot more complicated, because I want to animate the individual elements, I'm going to end up converting this into a mesh and then animating the individual pieces. So you can do this here. So you can change you can do a bevel around the outside if you want. Again, I would just be careful because that gets messy. Bevel is always messy. Some other things you can mess with, but taper radius, not even sure what this would be. Multiply, add, something, override. Once you're at a feeling satisfied with it and you no longer wish to edit your text, I'm going to RX90 like this. You can leave it as is, or you can put a material on it here if you want to, if you're ready. New material. I don't know. Maybe let's make this like a gold color, and let's make it metallic like this. Up the metallic, and turn down the roughness so it's like a shiny gold. I don't know. No, we need a little bit more roughness so you can see it. Okay. And material preview, or render preview like this. Where's my light? There we go. Okay, I shouldn't spend too much time on this. So I recommend converting your text to a mesh so that you can have individual control over it. So I'm going to go, with this object selected, I'm going to go Object, convert mesh. And so now it's, rather than it being a text object, it's just like a regular mesh object, and I can manipulate the individual polygons. The other thing that you'll probably want to do is separate with the different pieces you want to animate. So I'm going to do X-ray select, and I'm actually going to select all of this here, and we can do mesh menu, and split, or no, separate selection. So it's whatever you have selected, it's going to make it a different object. So right now, like, it's all just one text object here, but I have Nolan selected. I can separate this selection, and that becomes text 001. So like, I'll rename this Nolan, and then I'll go back to here, and tab to get into edit mode. I'll select Studio here, and go mesh, separate selection. The other thing you could do is, if you wanted to do like each individual word or each individual part, you can see that like these, like the L is disconnected right here. Actually, I'll do it on the last one just as a demonstration. So this one is Studio. And the last one here is, so we'll go back to object mode, stuff. Tab to edit mode, and I can go mesh, and we can separate by loose parts. And so it'll actually make each of these little things its own bit, which can be messy, in fact, so I won't do it. So I can just call this stuff because it's already separate. Nolan Studio stuff. Okay. And then that way I can kind of move these around a little bit. So the other thing to be aware of, so you can see, notice where the what's it called? The origin point is for these things. So like if I click on Studio here, the origin point is in this little orange dot right here. So if I tried to rotate, it would spin around that. So I want to select all of these things and make sure that the origin point is at the center of the geometry. So with all of these selected, I'm going to go Object, Set Origin, and Origin to Geometry. So it's going to move the origin points for everything to the center of their respective geometry. So now when I rotate, they're on their own. Okay, first thing I'll probably do is I want to get my camera set somewhere. So I want my camera to be like kind of looking straight on like this. So I'm going to go Control Alt number pad 0 to set my camera here, and then I might even select my camera and change some of these properties so that like my location X is really 0, and I'm just gonna like make these square numbers. So X rotation is 90, Y is 0 degrees, Z is 0 degrees. So it's like kind of looking straight on, and I'm cool with my Y and Z there. Okay, and then let's kind of get these into place how I want. So actually, maybe I need to change my rotation here a little bit. And maybe it is like a kind of a wonky title like this. Maybe I'll just try to get these into place here. Do I want orthographic view? Nolan Studio stuff. Okay, and then, let me just like add another light in here just to get, I don't know, put an area light in here, point it at that. Go to my object data properties, set this to be 1,000 watts. Set it to be a lot bigger. Nolan Studio stuff, great. And let me just select all of this and do I insert keyframe, rotation, scale. I'll do that for all of these here. And why don't I even just turn on auto keying? Select all these keyframes, move them down the line, 30 frames or something like that. And because I have auto keying on, if I move these away, that's just going to add a new keyframe. So like we'll have Nolan come from this way. I'm going to G move that over there and just kind of rotate it and spin it like that. Oh, but maybe it didn't move my keyframes. So maybe I just need to. Here's what I should do. I should go to frame 60 and just key the positions here like that. Oh no, 30. I wanted frame 30. You guys, I'm like already totally flubbing this. Let's remove all my keyframes. Let's start over. Okay, none of these should have keyframes on them now. Okay, good. So I'm going to frame 30. I'm going to I, do location, rotation, scale on this one. I, location, rotation, scale. There. So I've keyframed all these on frame 30. I'll go back to frame 1. Some people like to start on 1, some people like to start on 0. I've toggled auto keying on. So now if I just move this guy over here and maybe give it a little rotation like that, and then maybe this guy over here, twirl like that, and then this guy over here, down, twirl like this. And so now they go whoosh, Nolan Studio stuff. So if I do my camera preview, if I hit this button here, or number pad 0, they're flying into the frame like this. Cool. And so technically that's 3 things that are animated, but maybe do 3 different things, different types of things. The other thing I'll do is, why don't I animate my my camera? So right now I've got my camera here. Maybe what if I actually just animate the like X position like this? And so maybe I'll just have it start a little bit over here like this. Maybe I'll go to like frame 50 or 60. So it's at minus 0.6. Maybe I'll have it do positive 0.6 like this. So what does this look like? So if I go 0, yeah, I don't know, just like a little camera pan like this. And then maybe I also have, maybe I make a plane like this, and I scale this up, and I go RX90, whoops, RX90, there we go. And I kind of just G move this behind. It's starting to feel like kind of, you remember for a while Netflix had the like white background with the shadows on it. And then maybe I just have this drop down like a curtain. So maybe like, when I have auto keying on, so I gotta be careful. Maybe I'll move this keyframe to like 20 here like this. And then I'll go GZ and move this up here. Okay, number pad 0 to get the preview. Oh, and this is still in frame here, so I should go to frame 1. And G kind of move that out of the frame there. There we go. And if I wanted to get fancy, you know, I could switch this from Eevee to cycles, so we can get a little bit more realistic shadows here in Nolan Studio stuff. And then maybe there's also just a monkey here too. There's also just a purple monkey that flies through. I don't know, have fun with it. And then Control 2 to subdivision surface and shade smooth like this, and kind of move it a little closer so it's in the light, and scale it down. I want to see the reflection of the monkey. Maybe it's not reflective enough. Anyway. There we go. And then I'd render this out. Now, I would spend more time and make it a little bit more interesting. But, you know, so experiment with it, use some text, have some different animations, maybe animate your cameras, you can animate your lights moving or something, or like I want there to be like some sort of a reveal. So that's kind of your goal for this assignment. Let's see, did I cover everything? Probably not, but that's okay. Thanks for watching. So yeah, get started on your assignment 4, which is your movie studio graphic. Look forward to seeing it. Please email if you have any questions. Also, just another reminder, I always accept late work, so if there's other things pending that you've got out there, you can always get many of those points back. It's never too late for now. Sorry, sometimes I tell stupid jokes to myself. Okay, so long, bye.